Welcome to Tekedia Daily. I'm Ndubuisi, Ekekwe. Conversation today will focus on business, on energy in Nigeria. Essentially, every one of us, we basically know that the energy requirements in Nigeria is very huge. Unfortunately, we have not have developed the capability of not just generating the enough capacity, but also delivering the required capacity to the consumers. So even if we have gotten into 7,000 megawatts, unfortunately, the distribution companies are not piping that much to different families, homes, and companies. So there is that disconnect that, oh, Gencos are generating, but the discos don't have enough. Or even though the discos have enough, but they don't have the structures, the architectures to deliver them to homes and businesses. So as that happens, what is going to happen is that the discos, the government, the transmission company, and the generating companies are going to need help from the entrepreneurs, not necessarily just like the big entrepreneurs like the Gencos and Discos, but really many entrepreneurs working in the space of energy. So we're looking at people that can generate, we're not talking about thousands of megawatts now. We're just looking at few tens of megawatts. Remember that if we can do that, great things will happen across communities and villages, from the north to east, south to west, in our beautiful country. So I will be looking at how these entrepreneurs can actually find opportunity and how they can actually maximize anything they are doing through better business models by looking at what is happening around the world. I will look at solar because solar has the least resistance as well as the technology capability as well as initial cost of investment. Wind requires years of efforts. You have to get rigs across the ocean. You have to, and it's a very expensive technology to deploy, especially when you do not have so much scale to actually do that. The solar, hey, you just get a panel. You can build, you can design, you can put your logo on it, and just like that, you're in the market. So, but there is one big problem with solar. When people started importing this in 10, 12 years ago, uh, there were issues of quality. Most of them that came from China actually corrupted people's mind that solar cannot deliver. And for many people, they cannot get away with the fact that they bought some of these technologies, some of these products, and just within weeks, most of them went bad. I recall vividly when the Rural Electrification Agency in Nigeria came to my village in Abia State and installed solar based streetlights. I mean, just less than 9 months, all of them were gone. So that is the reality. No one wants to get back to that bad experience. Of course, China has improved and the technology has advanced, that some of those challenges are not necessarily there. Now we have to go into the business model. What can you do? What are the available opportunities for any company to run a solar business in Nigeria? I just go through them. The first one there is you just import them and you resell them. That's what we do in Alaba. That's what we do in Area. Excuse me. So the customer has basically must have enough money to buy that product. The customer will be responsible for maintaining it. Like say the battery has gone bad, the customer has to pay for it. Because of the old experience, many people are scared about this, and that remains one of the biggest challenges. Why even people that are importing these things are not necessarily finding it very easy. Another model is hyperchase. Hyperchase basically says, "Hey, you're gonna buy this, and I will give you the opportunity that you pay an installment, so you don't have to pay everything at a go at one time. I just spread it." Typically, what companies do is that they make the cost higher. Basically, they build in the interest rate for the opportunity cost that you have not paid them today, but you are going to pay them maybe over the next 6 months. A Kenyan company called Koba actually uses this kind of model. Then we have the lease model where you are never going to be owning that equipment. You are never going to become the owner of that equipment forever. But they will give it to you in the first model. You just use it. And then you now pay for the cost of the electricity. So any day you stop paying for that equipment, you don't get electricity, of course. And that basically means that you have to return the equipment. It's typically what they do in the internet broadband service in the United States, where most companies will lease a modem so that you can use it at home. And they now pay the fee associated with internet. And you never become the owner of that modem. But any day you stop paying for that modem, you don't get electric, you don't get internet. And for the lease too, is essentially says you pay for the lease of the equipment. Of course, you are never going to be the owner of the equipment, but you don't also pay differently for the cost of that equipment because everything is bundled in the cost of that lease. So they have estimated, hey, that this is what it's going to cost, and they just bundle that into the cost of the equipment. Most times, it's extremely very expensive for this model, and it's not usually typical, but it does happen. The one that seems to be taken up across most markets is the energy as a service. This is basically a model that is based largely on subscription, where the customer does not have to have any initial investment in that particular product. The customer is not responsible for maintenance, and all the risk will go to the entrepreneur because the customer does not assume it. Rather, the customer is just only interested in one thing, electricity. So anyhow you want, the customer will just wait for you to provide that electricity. And once you have provided electricity and it's metered, the customer will just pay for it. So this is subscription based. A Nigerian company called Energy and also Solar City, these are two big examples I can give you that are working in this space using energy as a service to reach families. For me, this is the most advanced business model that anyone can pursue. But the problem here is that you need to have the capacity to actually provide those customers with this equipment, and then first, without them necessarily giving you any revenue, giving you any payment. It means you need to have the money. And if you have the money, then you have the opportunity to now reach them. Of course, if anyone vandalizes the equipment, it's on your head because the customer is not responsible. And that also creates another problem. It's not just everywhere that you can install this equipment because the customer is not liable. So that means that most times you need to select the customers that you can actually serve under this model. It requires contracts in some cases like Solar City because that the investment you make is not just the cost of the equipment, but the labor required for you to set up that infrastructure in that customer's place. I've also seen that in some places in Nigeria, especially in West African parts, in the western part like Lagos, where basically is the center of commerce in the country, some of these companies are giving you a 1 month opportunity that you can take for that duration of that contract. But no matter what it takes, the customer wants to pay for the electricity, is not interested in infrastructure. And this seems to be the model. If you are looking for the opportunity, if you want to get into this space, either you go as energy as a service. This is what is most likely going to be a scalable business model in this space. Of course, you can say sales products to customer. The problem here is that it's going to be very difficult for you to differentiate yourself in the market because there are so many people doing the same thing. And there is no service because the customer pays and goes. And you may not necessarily reach many customers you may like to reach because they don't even have money to acquire some of these relatively expensive products. You are listening to Tekedia there.